The U.S. House of Representatives voted Friday to pass a $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that contains a controversial cryptocurrency tax reporting requirement. That requirement expands the definition of broker to potentially encompass miners and other crypto-specific entities that don't actually facilitate transactions, and ignited a fierce backlash among the crypto community. The bill now goes to U.S. President Joe Biden for his signature. Joining us now to discuss is Kristin Smith, Executive Director of crypto trade group, the Blockchain Association. Hello there, Kristin. So what are the consequences of this bill for miners?
Well, it's hard to know exactly what the consequences of this bill are going to be, because the next phase after the president signs the infrastructure legislation into law is for the IRS to proceed with a rulemaking process to put some details around how this provision is going to be implemented. The IRS does have some flexibility in how they define broker. The good news is that there was a tremendous outpouring of comments into the House and Senate throughout the past couple of months, particularly in August, around the time that the Wyden Amendment was in consideration on the Senate floor. And I think that Congress understands that they do not want validators, whether they be miners or stakers or some other form of validator, to be taxed under this provision. I think the same spirit applies to software developers. And so I do think that there's going to continue to be congressional pressure on the IRS to make sure that the definition of broker is as narrowly tailored as possible. And there may also be, we might see legislation introduced this week as well that would try to fix this. Now, I don't think that legislation is going to get legs right out of the gate, but there may be an opportunity to actually fix the underlying definition before the regulation goes into effect.
Oh, I'm not familiar with this legislation. Do you have further details on who's bringing this up and what the chances are?
Yeah, well, we've heard from multiple offices on Capitol Hill, both in the House and the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats, that really want to solve this issue. And, you know, there's really two ways to solve it. One is to get a very narrowly enacted version of the provision done at the regulatory level, or the other way is to get new legislation to undo the negative provisions in the bad legislation. So I don't want to jump ahead of any news, but I do know there are multiple offices that are looking at this, and I do expect to see some activity out of Congress this week and in the weeks ahead.
You mentioned pressure. We hear this statement from the Crypto Council for Innovation saying that we are deeply concerned with the passage of problematic language on cryptocurrency in the infrastructure bill. Our concerns are twofold. First, the broker definition may include those without a customer, like miners and developers. Second, the reporting requirements create an undue financial surveillance, which may compel companies to report on individuals who may not even be customers. So indeed, we do see members of the crypto community ratcheting up that pressure there. But is there anything that came out of this bill that was good for the crypto industry?
Absolutely. I think prior to this, most members of Congress, not the ones that are active in our space every day, but most members of Congress in the House and the Senate didn't realize that there are everyday constituents that they represent who are passionate about crypto. So even though we lost the ability to change this provision, we won in that Congress is now aware that there's an entire ecosystem that wants to see good crypto policy. I would say another benefit has been for crypto companies in this space. They have realized, if they hadn't realized already, the importance of constructively engaging in Washington. And I mean, I can say at the Blockchain Association, our membership has grown dramatically since August. We've had more resources come in. We have individual companies in the ecosystem that are building out their own teams on the ground in Washington. So prior to this, we had a very small number of players that were on the battlefield here in Washington. Now we have a whole army, and it's growing. And I think in the next sort of 3 to 6 months, we'll actually be at a place where we can stop just being reactive whenever something bad comes up, but pivot and actually start to pursue kind of proactive policies that will bring regulatory clarity and certainty to the industry.
Great. Are there other provisions to be concerned about within this infrastructure bill?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the broker definition, there's also this section 6050I, which would, aims to bring parity with cash. Because, like today, if you go and buy a Tesla and you pay cash, the Tesla dealer is obligated to file a report, get your social security number, and submit that information to the IRS. This legislation would similarly do that for crypto. And so, if you go buy, your Tesla with Bitcoin, you would have to do that same type of the Tesla would have to do that same type of reporting. Where it gets complicated is that, as you well know, we don't just transact on a sort of a commercial basis with one another in the crypto world. When you add in smart contracts and some of those capabilities, you might be in a position where all of the sudden a protocol, or maybe perhaps again a miner or some other participant in the ecosystem, would be on the hook for that reporting. And it's that type of disconnect that we need to make sure doesn't get enacted as the policy moves forward. So yeah, lots of work to do still, but the good news is there will be an open process for determining the regulations, and Congress can come in and act to undo this. And so we're going to be sort of at the Blockchain Association working down both of those paths in the weeks and months ahead.
Finally, just one last question. The President's Working Group came out with a report on stablecoins. They're recommending that stablecoin issuers, be treated like banks. Reading on this report, what did it get right and what did it get wrong in your assessment?
Yeah, well, listen, I think that what we were encouraged by is the President's Working Group didn't conclude that all stablecoins are securities and should be regulated under securities laws. They did reference the SEC briefly in there. The one thing I do think they get right is that there should be an option, for stablecoins to be regulated within the banking system. I don't think we want to make it a requirement that in order to issue a stablecoin, you have to be a bank. But there are companies out there and there are issuers out there that want to have the comfort and structure of the banking system. And so I think if there's anything positive that's come out of this is that it has spurred a dialogue, a much more constructive dialogue, by the way, than we were having when all of this was just merely a reaction to what Facebook was trying to do a couple of years ago. But a dialogue about, hey, what are stablecoins, particularly the reserve-backed stablecoins, and what is the best way to provide confidence that the users want to know that they will be able to get a dollar back whenever they need to do so. So I think that we'll have a very constructive dialogue going forward, but this is only a step in the process. It's certainly not the first step and certainly not the last.